And good afternoon from Philadelphia. Frank here with another episode of UFO News Network Sunday. And let's get right to it. We've got a big show today. So let me introduce my co-host, Chant Hanna, to introduce the participants. Chant, how are you today?
I'm doing really well, Frank. How are you?
Great. Ready to go.
Okay, so we have a really wonderful show today. I've been looking forward to this show actually since last year. We have some guests that are good friends of ours, and we have a deep respect for them, and we're very thrilled to have them on the show. We have Michael W. Hall, Spyros Melaris, and Philip Mantle to review and debate the Bigelow Memo and the alien autopsy film topic. Michael Hall, also known as a paranormal lawyer with the UFO community for over 4 decades now, is based out of Washington State. He's also the director of UFOI team. Michael is a former Thurston County Superior Court Judge pro tem, certified mediator, the founding partner of the Hall Law Firm, and a member of APRO since the 70s. Spyros Melaris is a film and a TV director and producer, inventor, special effects, and conceptual artist and magician. He also owns the Alien Autopsy film group, and that group is located on Facebook. So you just go to facebook.com, groups, Alien Autopsy. You'll find it. Just type in the keywords. And he also is the owner, creator, and director of the Alien Autopsy film. We have Philip Mantle, who is a long-standing UFO researcher and author from the UK. He was formerly the director of investigations for the British UFO Research Association and the MUFON representative for England. He is the founder of Flying Disc Press, and he can be contacted at flyingdiscpress.blogspot.co.uk. And then he also wrote a book on the Alien Autopsy film, which I believe he did update, and we'll be asking him about that update situation regarding his book in a few moments. And that book can be found on Amazon.com, DP. In fact, just what I'll do is we'll include the link to his book in the summary beneath the show. Now, last year, the Alien Autopsy proof, as it was called, email communication was uploaded on Reddit and dropped like a grenade on June 3rd, along with the Wilson Davis doc, as it's known, or leak, which dropped on Reddit also on April 19th of 2019. The Bigelow memo, as it's colloquially, anecdotally called now, it's a memorandum that was to Bob Bigelow, allegedly. Everything I say here is all allegedly, under that category of alleged. To Bob Bigelow from Eric Davis, NIDS, CC Colm Kelleher, NIDS, date 3/23/2001, regarding revision of memo of 2/23/01. Real important that people understand that this is allegedly a revision of an original memo. And then it goes on to say Kit Green's professional evaluation of the alien autopsy from the Roswell incident. It says in parentheses there. Film, video, and other related information. Now, we're going to go ahead and just read a little bit of the Bigelow memorandum right here, this alleged memorandum, that starts out saying this. Bob and Colm, I have learned from recent discussions with Hal that he shared with Kit the contents of my memo from 2/23/01 to you, and together they poured over the points that I summarized regarding Kit's evaluation of the Santilli alien autopsy film/video and his official briefings info on same. Kit then realized that he answered in haste mine and Colm's email questions because he was rushed for time during our correspondences. Kit is taking responsibility for using imprecise language and or not providing us with the complete or accurate details of his briefings information. So he and or Hal asked that I correct memo 2/23/01 by inserting some additional information and make minor modifications to the text. There will be no changes to the appendix. In parentheses, it says emails number 1 through 4. End of parentheses. Newly added text in memo 2/23/01 will be notated below by a check mark, and modified text will be in bold and italicized. Then it goes on to say, since spring of 1999, me, Colm, and Hal have undertaken a series of back and forth conversations with Kit Green regarding the Roswell incident aliens that their bodies, the crash retrieval program, the Santilli alien autopsy film / video, etc. The sum of the data Kit has provided us during these conversations has now reached a critical level where we can summarize the following facts. It goes on with this sort of bullet point here that says Kit was briefed 3 different times during and after his tenure at CIA on topics relevant to UFOs and the Roswell incident alien autopsy. Underneath that bullet point, it says briefing number 1, official briefing at the Pentagon, CA, 1981. While Kit was at the CIA, he was briefed on evidence that something, UFOs, was flying around. This evidence was in the form of collected intelligence data. In parentheses, there was no discussion of alien crash retrieval hardware or bodies in this venue. End of parentheses. Under additional query to Kit by Hal and Jim Westwood last fall, it was ascertained the description of the briefings met the standard of being an actual official briefing. Parentheses, he signed the papers and received the code words, end of parentheses. As this was a phrase Kit had used when discussing this with Hal in the past, this and other questions Kit answered satisfied Hal and Westwood that the briefing was official. Just a few more things I want to mention to our listeners here, and then I'm going to be asking all of our guests a few questions on what I just read. Briefing number 2, unofficial briefing at the Pentagon, CA, 1987/88. After Kit left the CIA, he was called into the Pentagon by a person in uniform. This person showed Kit the alien autopsy photos and reports, etc. The photos of the alien cadaver Kit saw were consistent with the cadavers seen in 1995 Santilli film / video. Kit was asked to professionally evaluate the material provided to him at this particular briefing. Next point here, briefing number 3, official briefing at CIA, CA 1991/92. While at General Motors, Kit was called into the CIA. The CIA people wanted his medical / forensic pathology expertise to examine and analyze some autopsy reports. The nature of these reports was left ambiguous during the briefing, but Kit was fully expecting them to be the alien autopsy reports he saw in briefing number 2, but then no action took place after this briefing occurred, and Kit was left hanging. Okay, so Spyros, Phil, and Michael, as you can see, they got right into the alien autopsy topic right away. Michael, I want to know, what are your thoughts on this? Then I'm going to be asking Spyros and Phil, what their thoughts are on this topic right here.
Oh, sure. Chant, thank you, Frank and Chant, for this opportunity literally to appear today on this historic show, I believe, with 2 of the most iconic individuals in the field of paranormal and ufology. My gosh, Philip Mantle and Spyros Melaris. Thank you very much, you guys, for allowing me to be on with you and to munch over some of the details here. I think the very best thing that will come out of our conversations today is getting more and more awareness to this whole idea. Whether it's pro or con, we need to at least get the thing settled one way or another, or keep the conversation going, whatever happens. My first comment on the initial part of the Robert Bigelow memo is very fascinating. When you're talking high-level government scientists like Eric Davis, talking about another high-level government scientist, Dr. Kit Green, and the details that he knows about what Dr. Green told him, it's very telling when, I think, I'll just kind of throw the first gauntlet down here, when they mention a list of the items that they were brought up to speed on this email thread and information. These were supposedly Kit Green conversations regarding the Roswell incident, the bodies, the crash retrieval program that was going on supposedly, and the Ray Santilli alien autopsy film. I think we need to keep in mind that we're probably dealing with multiple issues here. Not necessarily that everything is thrown together, because these issues that are mentioned, at least the first 3, the incident, the bodies, and the crash retrieval program, are the same issues that are mentioned in the Admiral Wilson memo, supposedly of the century, that Richard Dolan has monikered it. So anyway, just kind of that's the way I see it when I first start out our conversations this morning.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that input. And Spyros, I'd like to ask you last, because I want to ask Phil right now, when you listen to what I just read, and I know you've read this before many times, this Bigelow memo, as it's anecdotally called, what were your thoughts that went through your mind?
I mean, I actually received several copies of the email list, the day before it appeared on Reddit from different people. And, I think it took everybody by surprise, including myself, Michael, Spyros, Ray Santilli, et al. But on the first part of the memo that you've just read out, what I think is curious and is missing is what instigated. We'll assume, this is I know there's some discussion on whether the document's real or not. We can probably get into that later, but I see no indication here that what started this. This is 2000, 2001 they're talking, and why this is 5 or 6 years after the film has been released and seen around the world. What instigated this investigation, if you like, by Kit Green and his colleagues, and report back to their boss, Mr. Bigelow? That's always puzzled me.
Well, I think Phil, that it's pretty well mentioned in the doc itself that Putoff and Green were having a conversation. That Putoff became aware of this incident from Green's perspective and must have passed it along to Davis, who then wanted to get a report into Bigelow, followed up and wanted to get a report into Bigelow. That's the way it seems to me from the reading.
Yeah, it could well be, and it also puzzled me why they would get a Betacam copy and then transfer it to VHS. I mean, that'll be Spyros's field. I'm not a film expert. I know Betacam was, I don't know if it still is, but was used in the profession, in the television industry. I have a copy of that very same Betacam tape here, but I don't know why you then downgrade it. I don't know. I think it took everybody by surprise, Chad. It really did. And I'm interested to hear what Spyros made of it.
Well, and I'm going to ask Spyros, but there's one paragraph that I forgot to read, so I'm going to read it now, and it actually has to do with you, Phil. It says Bill McGarity, and later Colm, contacted Phil Mantle and arranged for Santilli to get us a first-generation Betacam video and pieces of the Alien Autopsy film. This was a result of the meeting and conversations that took place with you, me, Colm, and Bill McGarity when Bill came to visit us in June 2000. Colm then had VHS format copies made of the Betacam, and I sent a copy to Kit for his professional evaluation. What's your thought on that?
I don't recognize the name of Bill McGarity. I do recollect that I did have some email exchanges with Colm Kelleher at the time. I think he was one of the main guys up front when the National Institute of Discovery Sciences was in operation. But I did, like I did with many others, chanting, if people were wanting things from Santilli, all I did was pass on his contact information. That will have been his email address and or his telephone number. So I just acted as a facilitator, and that was it. What surprised me, they did get a Betacam copy and some bits of film. Instead of returning it back to Ray Santilli, it ended up here with me, and I still have the package here. I think I sent you a copy at one time,
yes,
Chant, and it still has the addresses on it. I think But it,
Right.
So, yeah, so it came by FedEx, and killer. So,
Right. And I think, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think it may have mentioned Bill McGarrity's name on a green post-it.
Yeah, we had the slide
On
up
the
already.
film canister.
yeah, that came back with it. But like I said, I didn't recognize Bill McGarrity's name at all. You know, I don't recollect him being in contact with me. I'm not saying he wasn't. I just don't remember. I mean, you know, out of the tens of thousands of emails, he was just one of them. But I do remember Colm Kelleher for whatever reason.
Great. All right. Spyros, everybody's dying to find out your input on the little bit I read right there.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Good afternoon if you're not in England. I've looked at this very carefully, and you know what I did? I started to say to myself, what do I agree with? Okay, because that's not the thing that I would normally do. I would disagree with everything, right? But I thought, let's just see how much of this I actually agree with, right? And I went to page 10 after reading the whole thing. Page 10 is March 23rd, 2001, if you've got that sheet in front of you. For those who don't have it, it says on point number 2, it says the body is not human. I agree with that, right? It definitely is not human. Okay, let's go. Point number 3, right? It says it's a non-standard procedure. I agree with that too, right? I can't disagree with that. For number 4, it says it wasn't a forensic examination. I agree with that. It wasn't a forensic examination. And it also says it had many mistakes. And I agree with that too, right? So far, so good. Right, number 5, right? What did it say, number 5? I can't see. Wait, what was it? Oh, God, I can't read my own handwriting. Let me just go to the actual memo, and I'll read you number 5, because I can't read my own handwriting. Right, here we go. Where is it? Page 10. Here we are. Okay. Number 5. The body was burned. That is charring, not decomposition. I agree with that too. It was burnt. I did it with a Bunsen burner. Okay, so I agree with that too. Right. Let's go into the number 6. Right. Number 6, it says brain liquefaction had started, but the brain was abnormal in terms of human anatomy. That means nothing, right? It's a jelly. It's sheep's brains in jelly, in a jelly mold. There's no liquefaction. How can you tell on that film there's any liquefaction? There isn't. You look at a film and you see the brain is solid. So that's nonsense. But I do agree. It isn't a human brain. Absolutely. Right. Number 7, right? The body looked pretty faked. I don't know if anybody understands what that means, right? It says the body looked pretty faked. So as far as I'm concerned, I agree with the whole thing, right? Let's go on to the next bit here. It says, 1 moment, sorry, I'm just going to the thing again. All right. So the final thing, it says, yes, I have read actual autopsy reports. Okay, so he's read autopsy reports. I can't argue with that because it doesn't say anything about an alien autopsy report. It just says an autopsy report. Then it said, I thought I had discussed with you and Jax in San Diego in fall 1988. The problem is they were real autopsy reports. Can't argue with that, but could not be authenticated because the prosecutors' names had been removed. So I had no one to call. So they were real reports, or felt as if they were, unlike the stuff just mentioned above. What it's saying is he read an autopsy report. That's what it's saying. And I think I agree with that too. Maybe he did, right? He must have read an autopsy report. So from that whole thing there, right, all it's doing is confirming this is not real for me. It's telling me it's not a human body. It's not a standard autopsy. There's not forensic examination. There's lots of mistakes, right? The body was burnt. It's not decomposing. It's telling us the brain is not a human brain. is telling us pretty much this is a fake film. That's what it's saying here. And I don't know if I'm the only one that can see that.
Yeah, we can all see it because I've got that particular page up right now.
Yeah.
Okay, and sorry to interject. Could you just please state what page number you were last
10.
on so the listeners know?
Page
He's
number
on
10.
10.
Number 10? Okay, got it.
Yeah. So anyway, so let's just live with that for a minute. But like Michael, I would like to lay the gauntlet down and just make a very, very plain and logical statement. Okay. And I'd like you to disprove what I'm going to say. Nowhere in the history of mankind has the alien autopsy material been seen anywhere before 1995. This whole episode we're reading now, the Kit Green papers and blah, 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 only came out after I made the film. That is my standpoint. If this is true and Kit Green had seen it prior to 1995, no one ever heard of it before then. Is that true? I'm asking everyone, is that true?
Well, yes. I mean, there are those, of course, that came forward afterwards. But
did anyone come up? Did anyone come forward before?
No one came forward before. The only thing that I can outline is Michael Maloney. Now, Michael was the head photographer at Mirror Group newspapers. He was a well-known, very high-ranking and award-winning press photographer. I've met Michael and let me just finish. I've met Michael and spoke to him several times. The only thing I can say is that he did make a note of it in his diary at the time. Didn't speak out, and he showed me the diary. But we have again. He didn't come out of the woodwork until afterwards. Yeah. So that's the only thing. And again, Michael didn't say that the film he saw was exactly the same as the alien autopsy we all love and know. That it was similar, not the same. He did say it was very similar. And when he saw it on the television, it was that reminded him of the film he supposedly saw at Disney some years beforehand. And that's the only thing I can say. But nobody else went on the record at all. Nobody, nothing.
Phil, just to jump in here real quick, you're saying he saw this at Disney. Can you go into a little bit more detail about that?
Yeah, Michael Maloney was the head photographer at Mirror Group newspapers. And he was sent on assignment to Disney, not Florida, the other side in California. They were launching a couple of new movies, and he was sent, to cover this for the newspaper. He got chatting at the time with one of the Disney animators. I believe he's the most famous of them.
You're talking about Ward Kimball here?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
And one of the other interests they had, this is how he got chatting to Ward Kimball, was steam engines, steam trains. And apparently Ward Kimball said, well, I've got a steam train, and he had a full-size one on his land. I don't mean a model railway, I mean a full-size one. And because of his profession as a photographer, he said he was invited to a private screening off the lot, so not on Disney premises, but off the lot, and was shown UFO films, flying saucers, whatever. These were supposedly the real McCoy, not anything that Disney had made. And as part of these films was I will call it an alien autopsy, but something very similar to what we see on the alien autopsy film. And that's what he said. He told a colleague of mine before this, but only again after the alien autopsy film was shown on television. He said it was that reminded him. And Michael's story has changed slightly with a few retellings of it, but that's the basics of it. And make of it what you will. I mean,
well, it's not unreasonable to suspect that there might be connection between the material that Maloney saw and the material that Green saw. which couldn't possibly have been the Santilli Spyros Melaris film.
Let's make something very, very clear here.
It's not Santilli's film.
No. But apart from that, let's make something very, very clear here. The possibility of anyone else having seen an alien autopsy in inverted brackets is not in dispute, because we don't know. Okay, so is it possible there might be a real film? I don't know. I've never seen one. But you know what? If Maloney says he saw one, I've got to say fair enough. I'd like to see it, and until I see it, I can't pass judgment. But what I can say unequivocally here, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt on everything I hold dear, is that he did not see my film. And my film came entirely from my imagination. So if he says it was similar, I am the world's leading mind reader, or I don't know what you're going to call me, but because I must have tapped into something, because it was totally from our imagination. So this is my testimony. I'm here and I'm giving testimony, okay? None of these other guys are here to be cross-examined, okay? And we've got to take what they say with a pinch of salt, because it's hearsay. Nothing that this whole memo, it talks about stuff which, you know what's missing here? It's not the words they've written, it's the words they haven't written, okay? For example, on one section, which is, I'll just tell you what it is. In January 2001, it starts, okay? It just goes on to say, Kit said that the alien forensic tissues could hypothetically be located, okay? So he's guessing that you might be able to find some alien tissues at this particular place, okay? Further on, I mean, above that, it says that Kit says that the film, what he saw is real, right? Well, isn't everything real? A fake film is real. It's a real fake film. So it's not telling us anything. It's saying what I saw is real, right? Well, is it a real alien? He's not saying that. He's actually not saying the words. So the words that are missing are the problem, right? So if this is an excerpt of a bigger document, or if this is an excerpt of what actually happened, what they are not saying is the bit I've got a problem with.
Okay, and just to be clear, where Spyros was reading that was on page 9, where it says, allegedly from Kit Green to allegedly Eric Davis, it says, yep, the video is real. I stick by what I said after the first review. Okay, Michael, I wanted to bring you into the mix here and ask you a question. Actually, I have 2 questions for you. And the first question is, do you believe that the alien autopsy film is real? And my second question, and I don't mean like a real fake, I'm not using play on words, I'm just asking you, do you believe the alien autopsy film that we're discussing here is real? And then the second question I have for you is, did Ray Santilli ever get back with you all regarding the claims that he made during an interview that you had with him, which was the second interview that I know that he did, because the first interview he did last year was with me, and I have not published that interview yet. But I wanted to know if Ray ever got back to you on the claims he made in that interview with you last year when you interviewed him with a few folks on your show. So first question is, do you believe the alien autopsy film is real?
I'm going to go along with Spyros on this in that regard, as far as when we use the term alien autopsy film in this context, that is Spyros's recreation. That's what I'm, basically talking about here. And I'm going to take his word for it, of course, that he put that thing together very expertly, by the way. Spyros has not been nominated by an Academy Award, but I'll tell you what, he should be nominated for an Academy of Paranormal Arts and Sciences Award. Let's at least put it that way, because it was quite a production. But in reality, I don't know. The issue on these previous films that people have been bantering about for decades that were seen before. It looks like we do have testimony from Philip that there was a diary that was actually recounting the fact that another autopsy film was viewed prior to 1995. And even if, for instance, no one did come forth before 1995 to talk about the alien autopsy film that they might have seen prior, does not negate the fact that it didn't exist. Obviously, Spyros's amazing production started a worldwide buzz, literally, that people could not believe. And so people, you can well imagine that it might have been involved in the background of this subject for decades prior to that, or coming out of the closet after this thing is being produced. So that's my long answer to your first question. The second question is basically, the interview that Grant Cameron and I did with, Ray Santilli. He did talk about certain issues that he said he had snippets of the real original film that he would be willing to share with us. And no, he has not done that yet at this point. So one of my major questions today, I would love to ask Spyros if he's willing to answer, is how much of that original footage did he receive when he made his recreation of his masterpiece, so we can get an idea of what we're dealing with. Is these are just a few frames, or is this like sections of reels that he got?
Okay. Back to the question of the words we don't use and the words we do use. Okay, there was real film. It was not of an alien autopsy. Okay, it must be very, very clear here. We had real film from Pathé News with President Truman on it. No alien. Okay, we had real 1947 film of a baseball game from a Roswell College game. No alien. Okay, this is not even up for debate. I've never seen any real film with a real alien on it, ever. Not from Santilli, not from anyone else, ever. Right? And I can also tell you, categorically, I can tell you that a lot of the stuff that we've read here about the alien that was supposedly on the film that Kit has examined, for example, it talks about a 3-chambered heart. It talks about the brain. It talks about one lung. It talks about no anus. Okay, none of these things are visible in our film. Okay, so it's not our film they're looking at. So if they're looking at some other film, then the description of that creature doesn't actually fit our creature. So, I would love to be one of the few people in the world who have seen an alien and prove it. I would love to be that person. It's much better than the person I am today, which is the guy that faked the film. I would have a lot more value, a lot more, if I was that person. But I've got to tell you, there was no real film. So, and I've said it again and again and again, the only person who has said there is real film is Ray Santilli and those who are being paid by him in his little circle. However, let's focus on one little thing, okay? On the memo, it says that we contacted Ray Santilli, who's going to send us a beta SP of the alien autopsy and some real film. Okay, they've been talking about this since 1995. By the way, you spoke about it, I think, about 10 months ago with on your interview. He still hasn't delivered a single thing 20 odd years. So I'm not sure what to make of that. He did promise you 10 months ago, absolutely, that he will deliver this. It wasn't a problem. It wasn't, I don't have any. It wasn't, it's damaged beyond repair and can't find any. And it was, yeah, no problem. I'll send you some over. Okay. So we've got to listen to that. We've got to pay attention to that. Even on this memo, it says that he was going to supply some film. Okay. I don't know if he ever did, but I can tell you, listen, I don't know what he gave you, but I can tell you it wasn't anything with alien autopsy on it. I know that for a fact.
And I'm the same, Spyros. I mean, I spent many times in Santilli's office, trying to get film out of him. One of the things he talks about is Kodak verifying it, which of course they never did. Now, Kodak UK was in Hemel Hempstead, not that far from where Santilli actually lived. And I spoke with them myself. And they wouldn't comment what was depicted on the film, but had Santilli wanted to, they would have been more than willing to oblige and analyse a piece of film. In fact, Kodak had analysed a number of alleged UFO photographs for us previously. Again, they wouldn't comment on what was on it. They would talk about what it wasn't. And not only that, they said what we could do, and they said they could bring in the British Film Institution, which also specialises in the restoration and storing old film. And they have experts in that. And all that was free of charge, of course. Now, what we should realise is right from the very beginning is that Ray Santilli, his motivations were to commercialise the product. He made no secret of that. I'm not saying anything that he hasn't said 1,000 times himself. So it would only make sense to have the film correctly analysed by an independent body like Kodak, and therefore the value of it would automatically increase. It's like if you had a painting on the back of your bedroom door, Spyros, that you thought was, an old master. You wouldn't just leave it hanging there and have some college kid tell you what he thought about it. You would take it to the experts and say, look, I think this is a lost Da Vinci, because there was one sold last year for $70 million, and I think I've got another here. You would have it checked, you would have it tested, but he failed every time, whether it was me, Kodak here, Kodak in the United States, Italy offered to check it, they were literally falling over themselves to analyse his piece of film. And the fact that he didn't give them any speaks volumes. It doesn't exist.
Should we just put this into perspective, just for those people that don't know about how a film is tested? Okay, all they need is 3 frames. Okay, in my film, it was 24 frames a second. Okay, so 24 frames a second. So 3 frames is nothing. And with those 3 frames, they can tell you the following. They can tell you the year that the film was manufactured. They can tell you when the film was exposed, or within a couple of months. They can tell you when the film was processed. Right, so you put the film in a camera, you expose it. Okay, so now it's got the images on it, but you have to develop the film. Okay, so let's suppose I managed to get 1947 film, okay, today, and I shot the film today or in 1995, and then I had it developed in 1995. They would be able to tell you, just by doing 3 frames, tests on 3 frames, they will be able to tell you when the film was manufactured, 1947, when it was exposed, 1995, when it was developed, 1995. So if it was a 1947 film exposed and developed in 1947, they can tell you that with precision. Okay, so 3 frames was a really, really good deal for Santilli to have the most priceless piece of footage the world has ever seen. That's what we're talking about here. The most important piece of film the world has ever seen. He never delivered it.
Okay. I'd like to, if I could jump on.
Yes, thank you, Michael.
That thought, because I tell you what, this is very important. I'm glad that you brought that up. On all it takes is a small part of the film to authenticate where it came from and when it was exposed. But I want to make sure that we understand from what you've told us that your film, the Alien Autopsy film that you did around 1995, was 100% made by you, not incorporating any other.
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
great. That gives us a standard to go by here as far as all of the images that are portrayed on the alien autopsy film that everyone knows of right now. It's very famous and still out there for people to check out. Was done by yourself, image for image, millimeter by millimeter, all done by you. That's good to know.
Yeah. Let me explain something else, okay? Because I'm in a very privileged position, and if there's any filmmakers out there, they can come forward and tell me I'm wrong, okay? But I am an expert. I do know my stuff, okay? And let me tell you, it is almost impossible to marry up a film today of an existing film, okay? That is a lot more difficult than to make the whole thing from scratch. For me to marry up a film so that it matches frame by frame, every item in the room marries up and is exactly the same position, and the camera movements marry up, okay? So the only way that if I had used real film, then there can be no resemblance or any relationship to the stuff that I shot, because there's no way you can control a handheld shot that's going to be in exactly the right position in the air and follow round, and the movement and the shake of the hand and all the little details. You just couldn't rehearse it. Forget doing it. You couldn't get a...
So Spyros, let me clarify just what Santilli said during the Grant Cameron interview that I helped to do as well. At that point, he was saying, he told us, and you probably heard it as well, that there were snippets of real film that were incorporated into the faked alien autopsy film that you did, and that those snippets would not necessarily have to match up. For instance, he said that they probably, well, some of them were close-ups of the alien's face, of the alien leg, and those kinds of things, which in reality, even an expert could tell you, yeah, we could do that, and then we could, like, do this in post and, put it on tape. No one would ever know. But what I want to reiterate what you just said earlier is that all of that footage, all of those images that you were saying on the alien autopsy film that you create were done by you.
Yes. Let me tell you something else. I'll tell you something else. If what Santilli said was true, okay. Now I'm going to make a statement. Okay, I'm the only person who edited the footage together. There is no one else on the planet that's gone near that footage. Now, if somebody added genuine footage into my film, it would have been me, right? And I'm telling you it's not. And Santilli can't tell you which frames are not the real ones. Oh, sorry, are the real ones. If somebody inserted it, it wouldn't be me, it's somebody else, because I have no knowledge of that, and I can tell you I know every frame that we've put out. So why doesn't Santilli name who edited it? Why don't we speak to the person who supposedly put those clips in? The second thing I'd like to say is there are items in the filming which are not real, and I can prove they're not real, like, for example, the autopsy table or the suits that the surgeons are wearing. So what we can do by a process of elimination, what we can do is we can go through the film and eliminate every piece of film that has the autopsy table in it and every piece of film that has the suits in it. Okay, I did do that exercise, and I've got, and I put the film out on my Alien Autopsy fact files, Facebook fact files, and it's just a series of white flashes. There is no alien image on anything that hasn't got a table or a suit in it. There is no evidence from anyone there are genuine frames, but if there are, the easy answer is please show us them. That's the easy answer. If Santilli says there are real frames, then he must know which frames. Has he ever said which frames?
No. And I know we're digressing somewhat from the memo, the email memo, but when we talk about the alien autopsy film, we're not talking about, we're actually talking about 5 separate films. First off is the so-called tent footage.
Yes.
That was the first film that he showed you, Spyros, that he showed me, Colin Andrews, the late Reg Presley, and others. That was used as bait.
And he told us it was real, right?
He told me it was real. I've got a copy here that he gave me on VHS, still sat here in my collection. He told everyone. When Reg Presley first mentioned this alien autopsy film on television, that was what he was talking about. And of course, that was made by Keith Bateman in Milton Keynes in a farm in Bedfordshire. Then, okay, we'll put that to one side. When we talk about the better quality stuff, we talk about the alien autopsy. Santilli now calls it a restoration. Not a recreation, a restoration. He's adamant on that. However, he forgets to mention that there are two different alien autopsy films. There is the one that we've all seen on television, and there is another that's in the same room, same equipment, same personnel, but it's slightly longer.
Shot by me.
They do a different medical procedure. The film is a lot brighter than the other one. That has been seen by a handful of people only. Myself, my wife at the time, Maurizio Baiata, Colin Andrews, Reg Presley, maybe one or two others. That has never appeared anywhere since then. So, and then of course we've got the debris film and then the cameraman's interview. We could talk all night about them, but let's just stick with those two autopsy films. So let's say, we were erring on the side of believing Ray Santilli, just for the sake of argument. We're talking about a restoration here. Then if you were restoring something, why would you restore it and have two copies that are different? If I employed someone, I was the head of the Louvre in France, and I employed them to restore the Mona Lisa, why would he do two? There's only one Mona Lisa. He wouldn't make a spare copy just in case you buggered it up. Or he wouldn't do right. I think the Mona Lisa looks a bit miserable to me. I'll make one with a bigger smile and a blonde hair. I like blondes instead. So why is that? Why would we? Where has the other autopsy film disappeared? Why? We're not talking about one film here. We're talking about 5 different ones.
I know the answer. I know.
I know you know. I know the answer as well. Right, young man.
Okay, but let's not forget to bring Michael in the mix here because
I think Michael needs to hear this as well. I'm doing this for Michael's benefit.
And you're absolutely right, Phil. Thank you for saying that because I agree with you wholeheartedly. And Spyros will answer that and attend to that topic. But I do have a question I will be asking Michael, and I'm going to let him know it now ahead of time. And that is I wanted to know from Michael, after Spyros finishes on this topic, whether what kind of time frame he is going to give Ray Santilli regarding the promises he made on that talk show he did last year. Okay, go ahead, Spyros.
Okay, with very, very quickly, I don't want to go on, like as Philip said, we're digressing, but the debris footage, I have unequivocally shown that it's fake. Every part of it. Okay.
Spyros, when you say the debris footage, are you talking about like the little the hand imprints and and the I-beam with the hieroglyphics on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
All of that I've proven is fake. I've made statements about it. I've challenged people to tell me things about the film before I revealed the questions that I asked. Because, for example, what the beams say, the language being used, the how the things were made, all these various things. But all of that we've shown, and I've actually got unaged footage. Right, I've got the camera original footage before I aged it and gave it to Santilli. So the unaged footage shows you that it's camera original new footage, not old 1947 footage. And it does raise a big question. Why would Santilli release a definite fake, right, with something that he says is of a real thing, okay? Why would you taint your good footage and use some fake footage with it? Why would you do that? You wouldn't do that, okay? So he has done that. He did present the tent footage as real, okay, to me, to Philip, and I'm the one who told him it wasn't real. And that's why I then suggested, well, why don't we do this properly? But I wanted to do it in a certain way. So he did, however, go public and say this is real. Okay, so he's lied that another piece of film was real when it wasn't. Okay, and he's done it again, but it's ambiguous now because he's saying there's real footage within the film. But we can then dispose of the debris footage. We can dispose of the cameraman statement. I've proven that I did that too. I've revealed who the cameraman is. I've done that quite clearly, and if you haven't seen it, I can send you clips and show you exactly what that is. So it's another fake film that Santilli has put out and suggested it's real. Okay, so he's got a habit of doing this. It's not like a one-time thing. It's there are known fakes that he can't argue with. In fact, he agreed that the debris footage is fake on the Eamon Holmes show, and he actually said, "Oh, it was artistic license." Okay. Well, yeah, artistic license, really? It's just fake. That's all it is.
Is Michael aware of what the Eamon Holmes show is? Just for clarification.
No, I totally understand what you're talking about, though. But I'll tell you what, you guys, there's some fast-breaking news that just was released by Philip that I don't think a whole lot of people in this universe knows right now, because he said there is only a handful of people, including himself, who saw another version of the supposed alien autopsy film. I would ask Philip if he's willing to do this, to give us a little idea of what indeed he saw on this longer, brighter version of the alien autopsy film.
Absolutely. It's nothing new, Michael. I can assure you, and I have witnessed testimony from each of the individuals I've mentioned in my book. But just for those that are not aware, the other, Spyros will support me on this. But first of all, the first thing, I've only ever seen it once, so I'm relying on my 25 years ago. The first thing that hit you was it was brighter. The film was a lot brighter than the one we've all seen on the television. If I remember correctly, I think it seemed, and I didn't time it, it seemed as if it ran a little bit longer than the other one. It's the same room, same environment, same suits, medical instruments, clock, telephone, etc. But they do a slightly different medical procedure. They still cut it open. It doesn't go out as focus as much. This is my recollection, i.e. they didn't go in too close with the camera. On the one that you've all seen, when they cut open the chest cavity, they take out like a little opaque piece of material, like a little gem, a semi-precious gem. On the other one, you can see that much clearer. So it's something that was removed from the chest cavity. And there's a gynecological examination. That's the best way I can describe it, conducted as well.
Philip?
Yeah. So let me just confirm. I saw that with my wife. We both sat in Santilli's office watching it on VHS. Maurizio Baiate, a researcher from Italy, he saw it. Colin Andrews and a colleague also saw it, as did Reg Presley as well. And the statements from all of them are in my book. And that's the best of my recollection. Spyros, I know you made it, so, fire away.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask something of you. Do you remember I told you what was on that film before you even mentioned it?
Yes, you did.
Okay, so I'm one of those people that saw the film, yes?
Yes.
At very best, at the very best. Now, I know the film. Yeah, sorry.
You explained things to me as well.
Yes, yeah. I didn't just say I saw it, but I made statements about the film. Now, just to qualify what I said, okay, the film was longer because I didn't edit that film. That film was not aged and it wasn't edited. It was exactly the same amount of film that I shot, but unedited. So if I edited out the bits that I didn't like, I would have ended up with a shorter film. Okay, but I didn't edit it. I gave that Santilli that film unedited, unaged. Okay, in its entirety. I also told him not to show anybody, and the reason I told him not to show anybody was because it's incorrect in terms of the medical procedures. And if somebody that knows what they're looking at saw it, they would immediately disprove it as being real, right? The other thing that I can tell you is it was the first one we shot, and we shot it as a pathologist would have done the autopsy. I had an artistic moment where I thought, wouldn't it be great and a little bit uncomfortable if they were to do an examination of the vagina? Okay. After I filmed that, it looked too pornographic. And I said, look, we're not doing that again. It's gone the wrong way. It's no longer a medical thing. It now looks wrong. Okay. So we didn't go there. The creature on the table, Phil, is identical to the one in the other film. Is that correct?
Absolutely spot on, yes.
Yeah. So, but I didn't have a damaged leg.
No, there's no damage to it whatsoever.
No, because that one, we had lots of time to create it. The other one, the second one, we had to do in a hurry because we did the first one, it was wrong. And Santilli had promised everybody that he's got this film and he's going to show everybody the film. And I had to create a new one out of my own money because we'd spent the budget. And because it was rushed, there was an air bubble trapped in the mold on the right knee. And when we took it out of the mold, it collapsed. So I said to John, let's create a wound. And that's how we got around it. And you know the burning they talked about in the memo? Well, that's because I had to cut the skin open. And we decided what we'll do is make it look like a bullet wound that came from behind the knee and came through the front. Okay. And I burnt around the edges of the skin to make it look like there was a severe heat there. That was just a special effect. But that was a big difference between the two different films. Everything else, however, is identical. The clock on the wall, the telephone, the autopsy table, the suits, all of those things are identical in the same position. The reason it's brighter is because it's not been aged. It was actually camera original material, very clean. It wasn't going out of focus because I hadn't done that to it. The other film,
Spyros, really quick, when you mentioned John, you're talking about John Humphreys, the sculptor.
Oh yes, John Humphreys, the guy that sculpted the alien. Yes, and John went off to the butcher to get a knuckle, a sheep's knuckle, a leg, to put into the fake alien, right? So the crystal that you're talking about on the heart came from a Uri Geller crystal book, okay, magic crystal book. And this is just so to think. Now we can dispel that the film that you saw, Philip, very quickly. We can dispel it, that it isn't the original film that Michael is talking about, because the film that Michael is talking about was nothing. It's a few frames. If you listen to what Santilli said, it was damaged beyond repair. There was only a few frames left. Well, how did they manage onto tape if it was damaged beyond repair? So it's one thing to say, well, there might be some real frames. That's okay. Listen, that's ambiguous at the moment. That's up in the air. But to say that this second film, or the first film rather, is maybe the original film that you're talking about as being genuine, it just doesn't hold water.
Yeah, no one's really saying that for sure, Spyros. But I'll tell you what, you just gave us some really cool information that I don't think a lot of folks know about. And I'd just like to confirm a few of the points that you made. The two bodies that you're saying in this thing, one of them had a gynecological procedure done, the other one didn't. But you're saying that basically they're the same bodies in both versions, is what you're saying, right?
Identical, came out the same mold.
Yeah, they were identical apart from the damage on one to the leg.
Yeah.
The other one, it's not.
Of course.
Yeah.
But then again, you're saying that John Humphreys made these bodies with this body with a mold, and then you're saying that there was an ability in that mold to peel off the skin, and obviously in the alien autopsy there is that kind of thing. Did he make a mold that was solid, or did he make a mold that could have been a skin mold that he put over another kind of body that was used for the internal parts?
No, it's very simple. The mold was solid. It's the negative of the body, two halves, and they're bolted together. And we put in latex. We swished around latex to every area in the mold, so that creates a skin. And that skin, if you were to take it out of the mold without filling it, it would collapse and stick to itself. Okay, it would become useless. Whilst that skin is on the mold, we then injected a 2-pack foam resin. What that is a resin that has a hardener. When you put the hardener into the resin, it reacts and bubbles. Okay, and it creates a foam like a sponge, and it pushes outwards because the bubbles are forever increasing because the chemical reaction. So what happens is this expands and fills with lots and lots of bubbles like a sponge and sets. So now what you've got is a latex rubber skin around a solid sponge. Okay. Now you take that out of the mold and it's solid. It's a body. Now, if the resin material that you put in to fill out the skin doesn't reach every corner because there's an air bubble. Okay, so what you do, you pour it gently into the feet and you let it expand, and then you pour a little bit more into the knee and you let it expand, and you slowly fill the body. If you pour it too quickly into the leg, which is what we did on this particular instance on the second one, because we didn't have a lot of time, we had to get a body out of there. Once we poured it in, and there was a trapped bubble of air which was between the shin and the knee. That whole bit was not full of foam. So when it came out,
I totally understand that. But you said some really interesting stuff here. I wanted to clarify: how did you get the cavities in this foam body to appear, and how did you get the supposed organs, whatever you're pulling out of it, out of the mold or into the mold before you made it? How did that work?
Very easy, very, very easy. What we did was we turned the body face down. We cut the back open. We emptied out the foam from within the inside of the cavity to create a cavity where we would put the organs. We put the organs into the body from behind, from the back. We then closed the skin that we cut, turned it over and put it onto the table. So now you're never going to see that opening, because at no point do you ever see the back of the alien. Okay, so when you fill up the cavity with fake blood, animal blood, because there's blood coming off the organs, because they were real organs. They were real, sheep, cow, pig. They were real organs. So there was real blood as well as fake blood. But once you pour that inside the cavity, as a sponge, it soaks up all that blood and it sits in the sponge.
Oh, that's genius. That's really genius. Now, how did you do the brain or the head? Did you do it from behind as well?
No. That's a different technique. The way we made the brain was John sculpted a mold, which was basically the size and shape of the inside of the head of the creature. But what we did was, before we put a very thin layer of gelatin and let it set, and then we put 2 sheep's brains side by side.
Did you do that from the behind? How did you get inside?
No. It's outside the body right now. Okay, so we create the brain outside of the body, and it's in a mold, and then we fill the mold with gelatin. Okay, so the 2 sheep's brains are now encased in a jelly mold. Okay. What we did was, and I want you to watch the film now, because what I'm going to tell you will show you exactly what we did. It's just a clever cut, and I'll show you how it works. John cut the top of the head off. Okay. We then fade to flashes of white, and I move round. And in the phase of me moving round to the back, we cut. I then take the head away, the cap that he's just cut. We take that away. We hollow out the head because it's just sponge. We put in the brain into position, and then we put the cap back on. And I'm now shoot from a different angle. And if you look at the film, you will see the exact point where it cuts and dissolves into flashes. Then what happens is it looks like we've taken the cap off and the brain was already in there. But it wasn't. We put that in afterwards. Okay?
But off of the skull first to pull it back before you took the skull apart, it sounds like. Because I remember seeing that in the film.
Yeah, there is no skull. You won't see a skull. What it is, we peeled the latex skin to reveal the sponge inside, which was obviously covered in blood and looking very shiny and wet. But once that happened, that's where he sawed the supposed skull. If you watch the way that he's sawing, he's actually not cutting into anything. And if you look at the way the head moves, you can see there's no weight to the head. Right? It's actually a big giveaway. But I missed one thing out. When we made the brain in the gelatin, we then coated the whole thing in latex. So it created a skin around the jelly. And it's a beautiful effect when he puts the scissors underneath the skin, and it looks like he's cutting a membrane. It's just a bit of latex. Okay, but that's how it is. It wasn't in the head before. It was put in.
That's fascinating. Awesome.
Okay. The film's there. You can now look at it again, and you'll see what I said is actually exactly what happened.
Okay, gentlemen, I just wanted to bring up a point a question to ask Michael Hall that I told him I would ask him, and that is this. Wanted to ask you, when Ray Santilli was on the show with you and Grant Cameron last year, was a little under a year ago, I think Ray Santilli made a series of claims and promises to you. The very specific question I have for you is this. How long are you going to wait for Ray Santilli to make good on the promises that he made to you regarding what he said he wanted to bring back to you, or that he would fulfill regarding a request that you had, or requests?
Well, I suppose that question presupposes that a time frame would go by, and then all of a sudden I'm going to make a statement of some kind regarding that. I have no time frame. I'm not waiting at all. He made that statement. It's going to be up to him to see if he wants to respond at all, and or whether he wants to let more time go by in that regard. I'm not the kind of guy as an investigator that goes out and hounds people to follow up on their previous statements. If they want to let them lie and not clarify them, that's up to them. And then it's up to the public to make their decision about the truth or veracity of what they're saying. So I have no compunction one way or another, whether he's going to come forth and talk to us about it or provide any of that original footage that he said he had. And I remember specifically asking him that, Ray, we don't necessarily just need generic footage of the original film to prove that it's 1947 stock. We need footage with an alien image on it. Can you provide that? He said he would. We'll see if he ever does.
Okay,
well, can I just interject there?
I was just going to ask you, yes, please do give some input, and then I'd love to hear from Spyros after you're done, Phil. Thank you.
Well, as for the time frame, how about 25 years? Because he's been promising to deliver that from 1995 when I first met him, and it's now 25 years. So, Michael, I hope you don't have to wait 25 years.
Oh, Philip, I'm not waiting at all. As you well know, just like yourself, we have lots of other fish to fry.
Absolutely. Sorry, Chuck, go on.
Great. Thank you very much. Spyros, did you have a comment you needed to make regarding that at all? Or because I did have another. Go ahead. I was just going to bring on another topic, but go ahead.
All right. Only an obvious one. Okay. And that is to say that if he has film, he should put it up or shut up. It's very simple. This is not rocket science. if he has real film, let's see it. We've had promises like as Phil says, right? Since forever, nothing's materialized. Lately, I mean, and by the way, in between the times he's been promising that he will give film, he backtracked and he said, I can't give any more film now because there's none left. It's all damaged. It's gone beyond repair. There is no film. Okay, he said that. It's on record. Is that true, Philip?
Yes, that's 100% true. Yes.
Okay, and then what he did, he went on Michael's show, and he said, "Yeah, no problem. What you want? Film? I got film. I'll send you film." Okay, this is the same man that told us there is no film. Okay, so if you say, "Well, I'm not waiting for the film," it's because you've either resigned to the fact that there is no film, which means that he lied. They can't word it a different way. He said they're going to give you film. He hasn't given you film. He could have said, you know what, Michael, I'm not going to give you any film. It's too valuable. I'm going to keep it to myself. He could have said any matter. He didn't do that. He said, yes, absolutely, no problem. He said to the Express newspaper in the UK that he will have a lie detector test with me, okay, about the film. He said, yes, I will do that. And guess what? He didn't do it. I was there. I'm still here, right? He didn't do it. So he makes promises because he knows that on the day that he makes the promise, everyone's happy. And then they forget. They forget to pull him up on it. So I would suggest, with respect, I would suggest that you do put a timescale on it. And you say, listen, it's been 10 months. Let's call it a year. Okay, we'll give you plenty of time. Let's have some film. Or we've got to say there is no film and make of that what you will. But to just leave it hanging forever is unfair on me, isn't it?
Well, I think the basic bottom line issue of our show today, the idea that we can prove maybe or at one point that Ray Santilli's film is not correct or true. But of course, that does not negate the fact that we've got testimony and potential evidence of the fact that there could be other films prior to this that other people have seen, not just one or two, that could be realistic. That is what I'm very interested in, because I'm not so much out to prove that Ray Santilli's film is a fake. That one way or another doesn't mean much to me. But if Ray Santilli or yourself or anybody else did a film that was very similar to a previous film that was supposedly real, that's what I'm after.
Well, can I ask a question, Michael?
Yes, but I just want to make it clear that this is not Santilli's film. This is Spyros Melaris' film, because he's the creator, owner, and director of the Alien Autopsy film. Please go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I know. Michael is a lawyer. Was a judge, I believe. Am I correct, Michael?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So when we'll go back to the memo that we started talking of. We've digressed somewhat. Let's assume, for some reason, we were in court. From your legal training, would that document be accepted as authentic in a court of law? Not what it claims to have saying it, but the actual document itself.
Well, I don't know that anyone is claiming that the document is not real. This is basically, as we go back to the provenance of this document, from what I understand, is basically from the Edgar Mitchell estate documents, along with the Admiral Wilson memo and some other things that have been leaked. So the provenance of the document is not a concern. But here's the
it is for me. But keep going, Michael.
Okay, I know your point of view, Frank, and it's very good and analytical. I appreciate your discerning capabilities in that regard. But here's the thing: I want to clarify to folks on the legal standards of proof that we're dealing with in this regard. If, for instance, you're convicted or charged with a crime, a criminal standard of proof in a court of law is literally very difficult, beyond a reasonable doubt, you have to be convicted of a crime. Now, when we're talking a civil matter, a contract, proving the existence of a document, those kinds of things, this is a civil standard of proof that's basically what they call a preponderance of the evidence. Now, what that means is only 51% of the evidence presented has to be determined to be true or correct to make it pass the preponderance of the evidence standard. So in reality, if you're taking this memo and you're putting it in front of court of law, and Philip, I think this is a fantastic idea because I have always wanted to do a mock trial on some of these issues in ufology, in cryptids, and whatever, just like the old Jerry Spence days. He used to do those on television with the JFK aficionados and really put this thing to the test, because if you did, I believe it would be proven, the memo itself, the actual truth that the thing is a real memo, beyond the preponderance of the evidence.
Well, I do think I do want to jump in here, and Chant dug in on this as far as some serious potential for manipulation, even if the lion's share of the memo and the email chain is accurate. You know, we've also got some email addresses related to Putoff and John Alexander that don't check out. And there are some other small instances where it looks like perhaps some manipulation has gone on. Which, what do you do in a circumstance like that, where you've got
So let me give an example, okay, Michael. An example is Hal Putoff and John Alexander and Kit Green are listed in the Bigelow memo as allegedly having worked at General Motors in Singapore. Now, how do I know that? Because, well, for a few reasons. One reason is because Jacques Vallée wrote a book, and he included Kit Green in one of his books as having worked at General Motors in Singapore as the vice president of General Motors there in Singapore. Now, moving along, in the Bigelow memo, it states that Hal Putoff and John Alexander allegedly worked at General Motors in Singapore. An example of that is just go to page 9, and you'll see at the bottom of that, on page 9, it says email number 3, and you'll see hal.putoff@gm.com.sg, john.alexander@gm.com.sg, and I went ahead and contacted John Alexander about this, and he said that at no time did he or Hal Putoff, and by the way, just so everybody knows, these guys have all known each other for decades. All these folks here in this memo, okay? It's not like they just met. They've known each other for years. And just an aside, wanted to mention that John Alexander actually hired Eric Davis to work for him under his leadership, is my understanding, when he put together the NIDS group for Bob Bigelow at Skinwalker Ranch. Anyway, John Alexander was very emphatic when he said, not only have I never worked at General Motors, never worked at General Motors in Singapore, and neither did Hal. The other thing I wanted to mention in this Bigelow memo is that Hal is being called Halbert by Kit Green, and I thought that was odd because his name is not Halbert. Then the other thing I wanted to point out is in this memo, it states that that Kit Green was going very carefully over different sections of this alleged alien's body. And as he was scrutinizing it, he went over the brain, other organs such as the heart, and then very carefully categorized each area of brain and then other organs and then the gut. And in this Bigelow memo, he says brain rugae. Now, Kit Green is a scientist. I would think somebody of his caliber would know that there's no such thing as brain rugae. In anatomy, rugae are a series of ridges produced by folding of the wall of an organ, not the brain. So mixing those two words up is very odd to me. And there's also a series of other discrepancies. Now, I can go over all of these discrepancies with you, but I believe that if I were in court with you, I would be able to point out issues that reveal that this Bigelow memo is not authentic as it stands in its entirety.
Well, Chant, you're right. There's a good example of what we would call a one-sided cross-examination of an expert witness like yourself. For instance, if there was a trial on this entire event, we're going to bring in collateral evidence about whether these people were nicknamed other names. Did they call each other different names? Did they make a mistake in their phraseology? Those kinds of things in the past. For instance, these would be an ongoing multiple day or potentially weeks trial on the minutia of trying to get both sides of a clear picture of whether there's any truth or veracity to the statements in the memo, as well as the provenance of the memo. And then, of course, a jury would make a determination by a preponderance of the evidence, 51%. Is all of this stuff add up to potentially being believable at a 51% level or not? And then they would actually make a ruling on that. And that's exactly how it works.
And it's important to note here that Richard, Chant, let me jump in. It's important to note here that Richard Dolan did contact Kid Green directly, and he essentially confirmed that the emails are legit. He may not have gone into the minutia of email addresses and so on, but I accept that. I accept that in general. That email exchange and the memo to Bigelow from Eric Davis is essentially correct, but it does have some problems with that does raise questions.
Okay,
yeah,
and
I
actually
got in touch
disagree.
with Kit Green. Sorry, I got in touch with Kit Green as well, and he again confirmed the authenticity of the document. And there's another gentleman named in this document. I'm not allowed to say who he is, but there aren't many named in it, so you've got about 1 in 5 chance of guessing who he is. I contacted him, and he said they were authentic as well. He wouldn't say much else, just he confirmed the authenticity of them. What I was going to ask Michael is if okay, and there's one thing that bothers me about the document as we've moved down it. I'll go on to that. It's the very bottom of page 8, and it's it says did you have any disinformation problems with the guys you were dealing with? Kit goes on. He said the PR folks around Santilli.
Yes, that was actually what I was going to bring up next.
And not operating with a full set of dishes and a little bit dense and not very nice to boot. So, in other words, you didn't need to do much disinformation because there were take a 2 short planks. Now, Spyros, correct me if I'm wrong, but I never saw any PR folks around Ray Santilli. And certainly in 1995 when the film was released, there was no planned PR campaign. The film took on a life of its own, didn't it?
Yeah, the only person that might be I don't know, very loosely described as a PR might have been Chris Carey, but he was selling the film. So,
yes, Chris Carey wasn't PR, and he certainly wouldn't have still been there in 2000 and 2001.
No.
So who they're referring to there, I have no idea.
Okay, and it's funny because you actually touched on the next topic that I was going to bring up. So I'm going to read that paragraph. And before I read it, let me just give some context so people know where we're at. We're on page 8, and it starts off with Eric allegedly bringing up this point, which is number 7. And that would be allegedly Eric Davis, the scientist. So it says number 7, and why the excruciating CC&D disinformation, in parentheses, the heavy concentrated debunking that befell the video and Santilli when it aired, etc., end of parenthesis, active measures to hide it from the public. And then Kit allegedly says, that being Kit Green, the scientist. That's easy. The PR folks around Santilli are indeed not operating with a full set of dishes, are a little dense, not very nice to boot. There isn't much CC&D disinfo at all. There doesn't need to be. I think this is a basic flaw in the analysis we have all been doing. The only explanation needed is simple. It is a legitimately classified black program controlled by persons who have clout and power, are very smart, and amongst the brightest persons on the planet. I know Spyros, by the way, is probably laughing since Santilli's name is said here in the same sentence as brightest. But anyway, the program is sanctioned and legally protected by the constitutional national security justifications that have always been tested in the highest courts of this land to take precedence over the First and Fourth Amendments. The fact we may not understand nor agree with the little we know is neither explanation nor justification from our not having what they believe is a need to know based on our want to know, and then is basically signed, so to speak, by Kit, with his name in all caps there. And then it says, regards, Eric. So I guess Kit wrote that, and then maybe Eric may have copied and pasted that allegedly, and Kit allegedly wrote that. Is that the thought process you all are having on that paragraph?
Yeah, absolutely. But I still don't know who these people is he's talking about. They're a complete mystery to me.
May I make a statement?
Yes.
Just for Michael, because he came up with a great idea, right? What a great idea! If you would like to do a court case, right, a mock court case where we do this, right? I'm there. Okay. Your challenge is to get Santilli there. Okay. I'm telling you right now, I will be there. All right. I don't want money. I don't want to be paid. I will be there. Tell me where.
Awesome.
Let's do this thing. Right.
Well,
okay.
and here's the deal. This is cool, Spyros, because I tell you what, it doesn't really matter if you have a missing person as far as a witness. That happens all the time in the court of law, okay? But if we had you, if we had Philip, if we had Chant and Frank and myself and just a few others, we could do it.
I don't agree. I'll tell you why I don't agree, right? If a witness doesn't come to court, okay, the judge calls for him because he's a key witness. This is the accused. Okay? It's not just a witness, all right? This is a man who, if we believe him, has got US government film in his possession and he's claiming it's his. Why isn't the government upset about this? Why aren't they after him?
Here's the deal. If a witness doesn't show up to a trial, the judge doesn't cancel the trial.
No, but do they?
Believe me.
All right.
Yeah, people are tried in absentia all the time.
Do you know what happened to me once? I was a key witness in the case and I forgot about the case. And I was arrested and taken in. Okay, I was only a witness, and I was arrested and taken in. So I don't know what it's like in America, but if you're a key witness and you've been summoned to appear and you don't appear, you're in contempt of court. How can you say it's not important?
I didn't. It is.
Well, I'll interject there as well. I mean,
yes, go ahead.
But earlier, Spyros talked about lie detector tests. Before that, I contacted a television company here. Had got quite a reputation. And I suggested to them that they get Spyros and Ray Santilli on to both tell their story and both have a lie detector test. And then you did the reveal at the end. And Spyros said, great. Santilli said, great. But then I put in a caveat. The caveat would be that Santilli would give up a few frames of film to be analysed independently, and the TV company could figure that out, who they wanted to analyse it. And once the lie detector tests had been revealed, you then open the golden envelope and the winner is, and it would tell you, the results of the analysis. As soon as I mentioned that, Santilli was no longer interested. So, and there's a little plug for my little publishing company in here, so please excuse me. Not so much about the alien autopsy, but coming in May, we have a book that's been published, and it is relevant. That's why I want to mention it. And it's written by a gentleman in the United States called John Steiger, and it's 3 dramas for the stage. Now, they are fictional, but they're all based on real events. And the first one is Roswell. So you were in our courtroom in Roswell and you argue out the for and against. And the way John's written it, there isn't a jury as such. The jury is actually the audience. So it's a great idea when we've already got it, but not quite the same. So I just thought I would mention that. It seemed rather apt.
Okay. Thank you very much for that input. I wanted to mention something that I know might be obvious to some people, but the email addresses that are not real regarding Hal Puthoff and John Alexander having been put in an email address fashion as having worked at General Motors in Singapore when they did not. I find that very strange that if I'm saying if Hal Puthoff has stated privately or publicly to people or inferred or appeared as though this Bigelow memo is authentic in some one way or another, and Kit Green has too, my question to them are, and Eric Davis as well, why then are there two fake email addresses in this series of emails? Why then is there something called brain rugge mentioned by Kit Green that he said he examined, which is an impossibility? Maybe there's some alien species out there that has brain rugge, but I'm not aware of it. And then the other question I have is, wanted to know, how is it possible to do an autopsy on a fake alien? I know that's an obvious question, but I've wanted to ask Kit Green that question a lot, along with the other question. How, and I know, Spyros, you already brought this up, but how in the world is it possible for Kit Green to have been a time traveler and gone back before 1995 and seen the Alien Autopsy film repeatedly when the Alien Autopsy film was made in 1995? This and many other questions I have for him. Go ahead, anybody.
Yeah, I want to jump in here really quick. I think it's very interesting, the account that Phil's provided regarding Mr. Maloney. And I think it was especially interesting, Phil, that he saw this at the screening with Disney people, who might well have been capable of putting together perhaps an earlier fake alien autopsy, and Green simply conflated the two and said, yeah, he thought that they were the same at least for a while.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's be clear. This Bigelow memo, this alleged series of emails that occur between these people, which are already two email addresses, it's an impossibility that two of these people actually received this email. And I just also wanted to mention John Alexander refuted this alleged document, saying that it's not even possible. I've never seen this before, and that he didn't believe that this was real, and he doesn't believe that the Wilson Davis leak, as it is anecdotally known, is real either, which actually kind of mentions him with his initials J.A. That's who J.A. is alleged to be in that Wilson Davis document. I say in quotes, it was John Alexander. He said both of these docs are not real as they stand to him, and that he has nothing to do with either one of them.
Well, I think we can see the intent behind these documents right from the very beginning, Chant, because right at the very beginning at the top it says alien autopsy proof.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
So everything else that comes is trying to support that statement,
Right.
And so what we have on one side is you have some saying, no, the wrong email addresses, Others on the other side saying, well, I think it's all right. I think a lot of them are saying, well, you're right in some of the discrepancies you've thrown up, but in general, what's discussed in this document really did take place. These discussions did take place.
Okay, then why would somebody actually consciously type in fake email addresses that were not?
Just to muddy the waters. Just to muddy the waters. Just to.
That's another argument.
It is, and it's a good one. Now, I did want to point out one thing, and that is on page 8 at the bottom of it, when we were talking, and also beginning of page 9 at the top, when we were talking about the PR folks around Santilli and the Santilli film, wanted to mention by Kit, allegedly being said by Kit. What's important for us to understand here is in this Bigelow memo, there's all kinds of data points that are brought up to our attention to remind us that these folks are only talking about the alien autopsy film that Spyros made, which people mistakenly thought was made by Ray Santilli. Now, they're not talking about any other kind of alien autopsy film because they keep mentioning Santilli. Yeah, no,
we're talking about the same thing here. What I was going to say is, I know another researcher who's spoken to Mr. Green, or Dr. Green, as I should say, emailed me and said, but Philip, Mr. Green is very intelligent, very, very intelligent. And my response was, so what? And I even though I worked in industry, I met some extremely intelligent people, but they were as dumb as they come. They didn't realize what day it was, let alone anyone else. But a chap I worked with, they called him Dr. John, was an industrial chemist. You ask him anything about chemistry, he'll tell you everything. But what we have to remember, despite his qualifications, despite his experience, all of these individuals and all of us speaking on here tonight, because we are human, we all have our own belief systems. And no matter how qualified you are in the field of anatomy, etc., it can be influenced by your belief systems. It's as simple as that. Now, whether that is taking part here with some of the comments from Kit Green, we'll never know. He doesn't want to answer an awful lot of questions about it, although I did get a few out of him. So just because someone is highly intelligent doesn't mean that they can't be fooled. As we have known back in 1995, Mr. Melaris, he sent me on a wild goose chase, chasing down doctors, pathologists, you name it. Most of the medical community we spoke to, Spyros, thought it would look pretty good. The special effects artists being what they are, all said, yeah, we can make anything. I was including that. What is interesting as well, and again, I didn't mention this to Spyros, because this is before I met him. I have a friend who worked in the special effects industry all his life. His final films were the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And he was high up the ladder, and he took ill after that, sadly. So when he returned from where he was working in New Zealand, we talked about the alien autopsy film, and I said, look, if you're my friend, if you were doing this as a friend for me, what kind of budget could you make this thing for? Bearing in mind, this is before I knew Spyros. And he said, around the £30,000-ish mark. Now, what was the budget you were given, Spyros?
35,000.
There you go. You weren't far off, was it? There you go.
And it was on record from day one.
Yeah. And this, I hadn't met Spyros then. I had, we were still running around looking for him. So even that, and then when I met Spyros, and he told me how him and John, bearing in mind, Michael, we actually have a Polaroid photograph of John with the dummies, with the molds, I beg your pardon. And I said to my friend, well, this is how they've said they've made it, and injected this stuff and done this. And he said, yeah, that's fine. There's no problem with that whatsoever. Because some people were saying that, yes, John Humphreys is a wonderful sculptor, but he's not a special effects artist. He wouldn't know how to do this, but of course he did. And so when people say, well, let me just finish. When people say, oh, I just believe what Spyros told me, well, no, that's not correct, because one of the things I did, and Spyros will confirm this. I went to his home, right? His partner at the time, and partner's daughter, and he showed me boxes and boxes of stuff, including Spyros, your diary.
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember? He has a painted storyboard, not little sketches. I'm talking full-size paintings. I don't know how many there is. Must be a dozen or 20.
Yeah.
I have a photo of him holding up 2 of those, but it was 2 of many. Yeah. And all kinds of other boxes of files and research, original faxes from Kodak telling him what edge codes to use on the film. A box full of pictures of a file full of pictures, I should say, of military vehicles, US military vehicles, because they were going to use them in another part of the film. So he could back up all of what he's saying. That's what I'm trying to argue about here. However, when you turn to the other side and you say to Ray Santilli, okay, show us your film. Show us a bit of film claim you've got. Just show us it. Tell us who your cameraman is. It was supposed to be nearly 90 when all this happened. Surely he must be dead now. So shouldn't hurt to reveal his names. You claim you went to his house and saw his memories, his army memorabilia on him in uniform and all this kind of stuff. Just tell us who he was. None of that comes up. He then says he brought in the greatest team of restorers you've ever seen. Well, who are they? Surely these people must be still working in the industry. Maybe they'd like a bit of credit for the work they did. If it wasn't Spyros, then it had to be somebody else. Who are they? Well, they're mythical.
Okay, I'm going to break in here and I'm going to ask Michael if he has anything to say. That way we get the opportunity to hear any comments he wants to make, any input.
Oh, I just thought of an interesting idea when we were talking about this mock trial. That would be a great idea. I tell you what, you get a lot of views on this thing, I'm sure. Because I really want to say that the content of this broadcast on UFO Network News Sunday is one of the best I have ever heard on this subject. And I hope a lot of folks will jump on board the archives and check out the details that both Philip Mantle and Spyros Melaris have actually brought to the table here, probably for the first time, I believe. But one of the last things I can see myself doing in a mock trial situation would be the final question to ask the last witness before resting and having the jury make their decision. And what I would do, I would ask Spyros. Spyros, you're going to love this, and I'm sure you're going to have a good answer for it. But my question to you on the witness stand at the last of the day of the trial would be, did you ever maintain that this alien autopsy film that you created was authentic?
Okay, that's a good question. And the answer is yes, I have. Because I made a fake. I made a fake that was supposed to be fooling the world. Okay. And later on, the original deal I had with Santilli, just to make sure we all understand each other, okay? The original deal I had with Santilli was we would make a fake, we would not sell it to anyone, we would give it to them free, they would investigate it, and when they can't decide what it is, and they can't decide whether it's a real alien or if it's a fake or if it's a human, they just can't tell you, then we would make a documentary for money and explain how we did it. Santilli sold it around the world behind our backs. He gave it to Channel 4 in the UK for free, because that's my home territory and I would find out about that. But I didn't know he was selling it around the world. When I showed my displeasure, I didn't know how much money he'd made. He kept telling me he hadn't made any money. So he said to me, we haven't recouped yet. I want you to say this, that, and the other on an interview so that we can recoup. Now, I didn't actually say it was real. What I said was, I saw a film in Santilli's office, which I did, which was the tent footage. And I said, in that interview, I knew it wasn't real, and I told him why it wasn't real. That bit was removed from that interview. So there is a piece of supposed evidence out there which says that I said I saw real film, but it isn't what I actually said. But be that as it may, you can believe that if you like. The testimony today, because I've now come clean, I've said this is a fake. Okay, I've proven to the Copyright Office in the US that it's definitely mine. I made it. Now, there is a film, and here's a piece of legal question for you. There is a film at the Library of Congress in America, dated 1947, owned by Santilli's company. It is exactly the same film that I hold a 1995 copyright for. Now, they gave me that copyright after Santilli registered 1947, exactly the same film. Okay. They told me that they are not proactive, they're reactive. I have to take him to court. I have to do a whole lot of stuff before they remove it from the archive. And that's something that I'm considering. But my question to you is, what would happen if I am telling the truth? And I assure you I am. But if I'm telling the truth, what will happen to Santilli and his registration of a 1947 bogus film? The next question I would ask is, what will happen to me if I'm lying? Okay, let's suppose the 1947 film was real, and I am now telling the government and everyone in the world that my film is real, and it isn't. Let's suppose it isn't, okay? What would happen to me? Because the point I'm making is, I'm here telling you it's not real, and I'm standing here and I'm available. Okay, I'm not hiding from anyone. Santilli isn't speaking to anyone. He won't turn up, and he won't defend his corner. So the question I ask you is, am I that much of a fool to stand in front of you and say it's not real if it were?
Well, my quick answer is that you're not a fool. Let's put it that way. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So what I'm saying is, I'm telling you, my film is real, and it's registered as 1995, and it's exactly the same, frame by frame, as the one Santilli has registered as 1947. So one of us isn't telling the truth. Okay? I'm here, and I'm making my statement. I'm making it, and you know what? I speak to any court of law. I speak to any police officer, anyone.
But I mean, I think that's a great idea to have a courtroom drama. I can see you standing in the dock now, Spyros, and the judge putting his black cap on.
Okay.
No, but seriously, I think that's a great idea.
All right, Michael, I did have a question for you, and then we'll wind down this wonderful talk that we had today. And the question I have for you is, what kind of time frame would we look forward to regarding possibly having this mock trial this year? Would it be late in the year? Would it be spring? When?
Oh, you know what? I periodically end up being a judge at the University of Washington mock trial program, where the law students put on mock trials all the time. These guys literally only have, as a part of their own course study, just a few weeks to prepare for a mock trial. So, I mean, you're talking, you could do something very, very quickly if the parties were available. And by the way, we could do this via Skype. You don't have to have everybody in the same courtroom together, which they do periodically now in any trial court. But, we have it all set up where we have folks pretending to be a jury. We have someone being a judge sitting up on the podium. It could be done very quickly.
Michael, this is worth too much to make it nothing. If we're going to do this, I don't want to be paid. I will turn up and do this, okay? But as a televised event, because I'm a businessman and I don't want the money, I want to keep telling you that, okay? As a businessman, this is a monumental piece of TV, and we should sell it, and I would like to give the proceeds to a homeless charity, okay? If Santilli does not participate, then what does that tell us?
Well, we'll find out at trial.
Yeah, because I'm happy to do it, but you know what? There's no point just doing it one-sided. We've done that today, right? I would like to cross-examine. I would like to cross-examine him.
Oh no, we have not done it one-sided. I think this has been a very, very, good give and take on both sides of the fence here.
Yeah,
so this is worth gold for the American public, the worldwide listening public, on getting up to speed on the details of this entire issue.
Okay, great.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Very quickly.
Go ahead.
I'd like to correct something that Philip said earlier. It's a big deal. It's actually a big deal, but I don't think he saw the enormity of it. Forgive me, Phil. You said we have Polaroids of John with the mold. Yes?
Yes, that's my interpretation of the picture with the mold, yeah.
That's right. Well, we do have that. But what we have also is we have Polaroids with John and the creature that was sculpted.
Yeah, I haven't seen them.
Yeah, no, you have. You just don't know what you're looking at. I'll show you later. But it's one of the Polaroids is a clay sculpted alien, and the other one is actually the mold, right, with Michael and the body and stuff. But it's a sculpture that you're seeing, not the mold. It's actually the sculpture. Yeah. So that's even better.
Yeah, and while you were talking, I was also running the Alien Autopsy film, and I reminded myself of the part where you talked about cutting open the skull. You don't see any skull there. There is no skull bone.
There is no skull. No.
You don't see the skull bone being taken out.
No, there is no skull.
No.
Yeah, but even more, but more telling. If you look at the way John is cutting the skull,
he's not putting any pressure on.
No, because I'm saying to him, John, don't push down because it's going to move. It's made of nothing. It's very light.
That's it. That's why you've got your hands on the head to stop it wobbling.
Yeah, but if you look at the actual movements, it's acting. That's all it is. It's just acting.
Two other things that we should have picked up on when you look at the autopsy scene is one is why a man behind the glass wearing a surgical mask.
Yeah, because I don't want you to see his face.
Exactly. He doesn't need it for any medical reason. No. And also, when you look at the body on the slab, there's something wrong there because it's not flat, and it should be flat. Because when somebody dies, all your bodily fluids sink to the lowest point. Gravity takes over. You can't say it's an alien, and that doesn't happen. It's not. No, it's not. Because when you cut it open, the blood runs down. It acts the same way as our blood does.
But how do we know how aliens behave? I mean,
we don't know how aliens. No, we don't. We don't know how aliens behave. Let me finish. But we do know how gravity behaves.
That's it. Yeah.
And whether you're an alien or a Manchester City supporter or anything else. Then Spyros knows that joke.
Isn't that the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So there you go.
Everybody wanted to point out that Philip Mantle wrote a wonderful book on the Alien Autopsy film, and I believe you updated your book also. If I'm wrong about that, please correct me. But I want everybody to know the name of that book, and I'm also going to mention the link that they can go to. The link will actually be in the summary underneath this podcast that we did. So just so everybody knows, there's two things happening simultaneously right now during our podcast. One is we are pre-recording this show for the show that Frank and I do, which is called UFON, the UFO News Network Sunday. That's a YouTube channel that Frank has, and I co-host with him on that channel. And then the other thing, and before I finish that statement, wanted to finish up by saying I put this together. I asked Michael Hall, who's a dear friend of mine, so is Spyros. Phil is a good friend. And, of course, Frank is one of my closest friends. I asked all of these folks to get together today to have this podcast. And Michael graciously accepted, knowing that he might have opposition to any points he might bring up. And the other thing that's happening to make this moment simultaneous is that Michael Hall is having his own talk show right now on what we're doing. So it's wonderful that we're able to do this at the same time together. And so we'll be publishing this podcast on Frank's YouTube channel, on the UFO News Network, Sunday. And then I wanted to also mention, if anybody wants to grab that book that Phil wrote, it's on Amazon. So you type in amazon.com/DP/17064000276. I'll just repeat that. It's amazon.com/DP/17064000276. And then, Michael, you'll have to keep us updated on when you actually propose to have the goal of having that idea come to full fruition, which is having an actual mock trial of what we just talked about today. And then also wanted to mention there's a gentleman by the name of James Conger who's been very carefully listening and following on this program that we've had. He had a question he had wanted to ask, and maybe you all can very, very briefly attend to it. If you don't mind, keep it as brief as possible. James' question is this. The question he has for the panelists are, one question that I have wondered, and maybe I could get your input or from Michael's, is how most of the aliens would look humanoid. I've heard that most mainstream scientists would say that they would not look anything like us. Would we think they are related to us? So it sounds like there's a lot of questions he actually kind of has in that one question. I'll read it again. How most of the aliens would look humanoid. He's wondered that.
There's several ways to answer that question. There's a lot of popular theories, one of which is very popular at the moment, is that they're not aliens, they are us from the future. So therefore we look slightly different. You know, we look like they come from Lancashire or somewhere like that, but they look slightly different because they are future humans. Other is that we were seeded by another species, so therefore Prometheus, we look a bit like them. There's another theory, and I forget the actual correct scientific name for it, but it's a theory that the bipedal life form, you and I, is perhaps the best type of life form to adapt into the universe. So it won't get any better. So if intelligent life is to evolve on other planets, extrasolar, then they should look something similar to us. Maybe not exactly the same, but the most important thing, and I asked Professor Michio Kaku about this, they must have a disposable thumb. Because without no thumb, you can't manipulate your environment. Therefore, you can't build things and make things. But they should look something similar to us. So there's a number of possibilities why, if we are being visited by aliens, that they look, humanoid.
May I elaborate on that?
Yeah, of course.
That bit. Okay, I made the creature, as we all know. I hope so by now. But there's also the big question of why did I make a creature that doesn't look anything like anything that's been described in the textbooks since forever? Okay. I went against everything that people said they saw an alien looks like, apart from the black eyes and the big head.
And the 6 fingers.
Yeah. But I had to keep some kind of a little bit of familiarity about it. But the thing is, I added 6 fingers and 6 toes, which nobody said ever before 1995. The thing, though, that I had to do, because Michael's right, I'm not an idiot. When I'm expecting top pathologists and doctors to take a piece of film seriously, if I made it a little green man with little spindly fingers and they would look at it and say, "Give me a break. I'm busy, right? I'm doing serious stuff. This is a joke." So I made the creature look almost human, so they can be excited about, wow, what is this? Is it a deformity? Is it an illness? What is it? Right? And because they would not even look at it if it was sci-fi. If it was the E.T. you see in Steven Spielberg's film, people would laugh. They wouldn't say this is a serious film.
But you're right there, Spyros, because one of the biggest critics at the time, back in 1995, was airline pilot Kent Jeffrey.
Yeah.
He came to the filming on the screening on May the 5th, stormed out there, made an idiot of himself. But anyway, he was convinced that the film was real. But what you were actually looking at was some deformed, poor human creature. In other words, it was a snuff movie.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it was real, i.e. not a hoax.
Yeah, yeah.
So even your biggest critic was kind of convinced.
Yeah. Obviously, the question I'm asking is, because I'm making the statement, right? I created it for that reason, to be the black eyes didn't make sense to me when I looked at everybody saying, oh, they had this big black almond eyes. It didn't make sense to me because I work with lenses and I know how lenses work, and they can't work. Okay, all right, it's an alien. Well, that's not a good enough answer. Okay, because it's too. So I wanted it to make sense. So I designed it so we could remove lenses, revealing a traditional eye, a lens with an iris that would work. Okay, so yes, it's very humanoid. I know by the time that we started to cut it open, it's too late. The experts are watching. They're already into the film. They're looking at it and they're trying to analyze it. And suddenly, if you watch, for example, Cyril Wecht, he's watching it and deciding what it is. Is it a woman with Turner syndrome? Is it somebody with polydactyly and a deformity? Is it radiation? What is it, right? He's looking at it seriously. As soon as it's cut open, he doesn't want to say, I'm wasting my time here. So what he does is, oh, well, this is not the interior of a human being, right? So he's now carrying on. But he's telling us this is not real. I don't know what it is. What is it? Right? And that's what it was designed to do. Because if I want an expert to look at anything, I need to give them something that's going to be of interest to them to look at. If it's going to be a joke and make them a mockery in their own profession, oh yeah, this is the chump that looked at the little green man and you know, they don't want to be humiliated like that. So it had to look real. It had to look like it could be human.
Yeah, and not only that, you know, I pointed out that for a long time, certainly here in the UK, we didn't use metric measurements. We used the old imperial system. Of course, we used to add up in 12s. So this alien had got 12 fingers. Perfect. Yeah. He'd have come top of our class. You know, well, we did. You know, that's a simple fact of life. You know, I was the generation at school here who was taught both imperial and metric, because we were turning metric, although we never have done, if we're honest. You know, and so you know, Britain is the land of Doctor Who, so I think Spyros was either you know, thinking along, was perhaps inspired by Doctor Who, consciously or even subconsciously, because a lot of the aliens in Doctor Who's, guess what? They look pretty human.
But you know, Phil, that's quite an important thing, right?
It is.
My partner in crime is the man who worked on Doctor Who.
Well, there you go.
Okay, John made creatures for Doctor Who.
My special effects friend, he worked on Doctor Who as well when he was serving his apprenticeship. Yeah. So there you go.
Okay, so there we go. And I don't think it's fair to leave Hall out of this, Michael Hall out of this conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and read that question to him again. So that way he gets the opportunity to answer it with as much brevity as possible. So I'll go ahead and read it from James Conger again. And that is, one question that I have wondered, maybe I could get your input or from Michael, is how most of the aliens would look humanoid. And then he goes on to say, I've heard that most mainstream scientists would say that they would not look anything like us. Okay, so what's your input, you know, your personal perspective on that topic, Michael?
Yeah. Matter of fact, James, that's a great question. But in reality, I would not say that most mainstream scientists say that they wouldn't look anything like us. That's not true. But I think, you know, basically Philip covered the wide range of possibilities of why they might be humanoid in character. Obviously, they don't look exactly like us. But then again, you're talking people that are claiming to have met tall whites, the people that look just like us from Norway or Denmark. And that can actually pass amongst us as well. So who knows? It's a very good question that we need to keep discernment about and keep our eyes and ears open for sure. Great question.
Well, the only thing we know about biology is restricted to our own planet. The humanoid life form has become the dominant force on this planet for the time being, anyway.
Yeah. At least on land,
At least, but we are the top of the food chain either way. So it's not unreasonable to suspect that if there was another planet that was similar to ours, that they might have something that looked pretty much like us. But the only way to find out, of course, is one day go there. So,
yep.
Okay.
A good question.
Well,
good question.
it is a good question. I just want to mention some science fiction that all of us have probably come across. I know I read it avidly when I was growing up. I know that Michael Hall did, and that was the science fiction of Isaac Asimov and Ray Bradbury. In one of many Ray Bradbury stories where he wrote about the ET civilization topic, there was a story he did where I believe extraterrestrials were floating along in spheres, luminous spheres. So it's just important to note that aliens might not actually be in the kind of form that we understand the stereotypical fashion they could be in. So on that note, I just would like to thank everybody for having been on our show. And Michael, I look forward to actually watching this show on your show, and I look forward to you listening to our show on our show when this is all done. And I thank Spyros Melaris, the owner, creator, and director of the Alien Autopsy film. And just want to mention that it's going to have its 25-year anniversary this year. And Spyros, we are going to wrap up this show right now, but can you just mention a little bit information regarding that 25-year anniversary so folks know more about it?
Yeah, where's your book?
Yes.
Where's your book, Mr. Melaris?
I'm in the process of printing it. So we're getting there. We're getting there. It's been a long time, but you know what? I'm glad it's taken this long because so much has come up that needs to be in there, and it will be. The thing is, I've learned my lesson, and that is you can never argue politics or religion or UFOs with a human being because they have an opinion and that's it, right? Now, this is the lesson I've learned, okay? So what we're doing today is we're talking, from my perspective, we're talking facts, okay? Not pretend, not belief systems, not... Now, other people will walk away and go, well, I don't believe them. I think it's real. Well, you know what? I can't argue with that person. All I can do is deliver some evidence, okay? If that evidence isn't enough, because, telling them their baby's ugly is never going to work. Telling them there is no God, that's not going to work. They believe what they want to believe. All I can do is just deliver the facts, okay? So that's what I'm going to do in my book. I'm going to do a series of talks starting from July, which will be on the anniversary. And if anybody wants me to do a talk anywhere where they are, invite me and I'll come.
Michael,
okay, great.
I'll tell you, he's just doing this. I've been waiting 25 years for this book. He's just doing it to get me.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much for having been on our show today. We're very grateful to have had all of you. And I also want to mention something important. I know I've said this before, but Michael Hall and Spyros Melaris are dear good friends of mine. And I'm just so thrilled to see, and also Philip Mantle, I count on him as a good friend too. I think it's important for everybody to note that although we might be on different sides of the various topics we brought up, we were able to bring them up in a civil manner without, acting in a disruptive or nefarious or mean or animal type manner towards each other. So I'm just grateful everybody was so polite and professional. And I really look forward to listening to this show when it's done. And I thank you, Frank, so much for having had this show today.
Yep, it was great. Phil, Spyros, and Michael, thanks so much for joining us. And we're about out of time. So thanks again, everybody. And we expect to be back tomorrow night with a special interview as well. So enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody, and tune in tomorrow. Thanks.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Michael.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.